This is the Red Podcast.
It's David Hooper. This is the Red Podcast, the marketing podcast for experts. If you've got expert knowledge, you want to spread a message, you want to share that knowledge with people, make more money with it, be more effective in how you reach those people, you are in the right place. On the last episode, I did an interview with strongman Eric Moss, mostly about his business. Some of it was mindset related, specifically the mindset related to his performance, which is entertaining people by bending and breaking things. You may not be bending or breaking things, but you've got that kind of miracle, that kind of trick, if you will. When you can get in front of a live audience and when you can solve problems, they come to you and they've got something that needs fixed and you can fix that for them. You're in the same position that Eric Moss is. You're a magician. You are shedding them of something. You are helping them with something. You may be familiar with some of these financial gurus, Dave Ramsey, Suze Orman. When you go to them and you've got debt or you've got money to invest and they can show you how to pay down debt or they can show you how to take that dollar and make it $2, that's a trick. That's no different than what Eric Moss is doing. And to deliver that trick, you've got to have the proper mindset. I want to talk about that. One of the people that he mentioned was Slim the Hammerman Farman. He talked about a stunt. And by the way, I'm using stunt and trick. I don't mean that in a disrespectful way. He talked about something that he did. That's what I mean by that. It was a feat of strength. I want to read you something about that specific stunt. This is from oldtimestrongman.com. And it says this: in the year 1975, Slim the Hammerman Farman stood alone before a crowd of 21,000 screaming fans at Madison Square Garden. Just a few moments later, he would attempt a world record to lever a pair of 28-pound hammers, 56 pounds on 31-inch handles, with 1,736 pounds of pressure on his wrist. So what he's saying by lever a pair of 28-pound hammers, lever meaning leverage, and the leverage is working against him. He had 56 pounds on the hammer, but they're 31 inches in the air, and that leverage was 1,736 pounds of pressure on his wrist. It continues. For a second, Slim's mind flashed back to his job for the previous 3 decades, swinging a 16-pound sledgehammer for 9 hours a day, breaking tons of stone. He thought of the day back in 1955 when he met his mentor, the mighty Adam, who taught him how to break chains and bend steel as well as how to focus all his energy for one intense moment. Slim Farman moved toward the hammers. A hush fell over the crowd, and Slim stepped into the record books. I found a video of Slim the Hammerman Farman doing this. It will be posted at redpodcast.com. It's impressive. And watching him, hearing that story, that got me thinking about aging and longevity and our abilities to keep going. I mentioned something in the previous episode about being in the gym when I turned 30. It wasn't as easy. Then when I turned 40, not as easy. Work is the same way, at least for me. The way I work now is different than how I used to work. But I'm also working in a different way. I am more efficient. I'm like Slim the Hammerman Farman. I have found where to focus that energy so I'm able to get the same amount of work, maybe more work done than I would have 10, 20 years ago. I'm going to talk more about aging in the next couple of podcasts. On the next episode, I've got an interview with a woman named Zita Christian. She is the oldest active podcaster that I know. I just did a conversation with her. We've got an interesting story about that. That's coming up on the next episode of Red Podcast. To make sure that you don't miss it, bigpodcast.com/subscribe. There you will find all the podcasts that I'm doing right now. You'll be able to subscribe, get more info, and to never miss an episode. So go to bigpodcast.com/subscribe. Look for the artwork, Red Podcast. You'll know it because it's red. Continuing on this thread, let's talk about the related topic, and that is reinvention. Because right now, a lot of people are having to reinvent themselves. We are in the middle of what some would call a crisis. COVID-19, coronavirus, for some, it definitely is a crisis. For others, not so much. And I think that goes back to, where do you put your energy? Some people are more prepared for something like this. Some people less prepared. But going through this now, if you are not where you need to be with your business, if you're not where you need to be personally, if you're not where you need to be with your relationship, a lot of relationships going through stress right now, that is an opportunity for you to fortify those things, to look at yourself where you are now and say, if this comes back around in the near future, several years from now, or something like this comes back around, I want to be ready for that. That's what reinvention is about. As you know from listening to this podcast, I've spent most of my career in the music business. I was doing marketing, not as a musician, although I was a musician before I got into the marketing. That was another type of reinvention. I want you to think about the music business. Let's go back 100 years. How was music distributed then? Live events. People would come to a club, they would see a musician play a song, and there was that one moment in time. It wasn't recorded. You would see it, you would experience it, go home. You would go to the club the next night, the next month, the next week, however often you went to the club, and you would have to do that if you wanted to hear that song again. 80 years ago, how was music distributed? Radio. But that stacked onto the live events. We still had live events, and now we had radio. You didn't have to go to the club to hear something. You could turn on a box in your house, and you could hear it broadcast through the airwaves. 50 years ago, how was music distributed? Vinyl records, but also stacking on what we previously had. It was distributed via radio. It was distributed via live events. All of these things worked together. Nothing was taken away because people would hear something through radio. They would buy a vinyl record. They would play the record whenever they wanted to. They would be more attached to the musician. They would go see the musicians or see performances of similar musicians when those musicians were available. Everything worked together. It was a different experience, yet it was a similar experience. 30 years ago, how was music distributed? CDs. And this was a huge boom for the music industry. If you look at the 1990s, people bought music that they already owned. They had it on vinyl, cassette, 8-track. But we had this belief that CDs were better. They were digital. They were indestructible. They're never going away. We bought it on CD, even though we already had it. And they listened to radio. And they went to live events. 10 years ago, how was music distributed? Online. But people still listen to radio today. If we're not in quarantine, they still go to see live events. And a lot of people have this thought that because music is online now, and you can go to Spotify, you can get all you want for $10 a month, that's really hurt the music industry. It has not. That is actually about 4 times more money than the average person was spending on music when we had CDs. The average person, about $250 per month on music, and that was retail. That wasn't even wholesale, so maybe it's $1.38, I don't know, $1.50. It wasn't $250. Now they're getting $10 a month, and granted, it gets distributed a million different ways, and the business has changed, and there's some big winners and there's some losers. I'm not getting into that. But the point is, from a consumer standpoint, that they can still consume music. It still gets them engaged with the artist, with the songs. They still want to go out because Spotify is not taking that over. They still want merch, and they are paying 4 times the money for something that we don't even have to press. We don't have to put it on a truck. We don't have to put it in a store. It's more or less air. Once you record it, you turn it into ones and zeros, upload it to Spotify. They distribute it. They handle everything. The only thing you need to do as a musician, a label, a publishing company, you throw those ones and zeros out there and they wire you money every month. I know because I'm one of those people. Like I said, being in the music business, I had a publishing company, owned some content. It's great. Mailbox money, we call it. Comes in every month. Not a ton, at least not for me, because again, they're big winners, big losers, but there are a lot of guys like me. They make pretty good money and they don't have to do a thing. I'm not actively involved in the music industry anymore, but I've got that residual income. And as experts, we have this same opportunity. You were doing something live, but you're quarantined now. You're in your house. You can't leave. What's your solution? One solution that you have is podcasting. It's not unlike the music industry. You record something to tape, you turn it into ones and zeros, you upload it. Spotify is one of those places that you get it to, and it goes everywhere. You hear these big numbers with podcasts. I've got 8 million downloads. Think about that. What that distribution would have been like 30 years ago. 8 million CDs, 8 million cassettes. We throw these numbers around like they're nothing, but they're real people who are listening to this stuff, and it's easy. You record it once, you upload it, residual. Maybe not the money, depending on how you monetize your podcast, but your message continues to go out there, even though you've only recorded it once. You don't need to repress it. You don't need to redistribute it. You put it out there. It is there forever. Podcasting isn't your thing? Books. And how do we do books now? Ebooks. Same basic thing. You record your message once. If you're going to do a book, let's say it's into a word processor, you don't even have to print it. Not once. You edit it. You get it where it makes sense. It's communicating your message. You upload it to Amazon, ebook providers, digital providers that send that book out to wherever digital books are sold. You do the work once. They do the work of getting it to people. You collect a check. Audiobooks, the same way. You send it to Audible, your audiobook distributor, just like the books, just like the music, just like podcasts. Do the work once, they send it out. Webinars, same thing. Do the work once, it goes out. It is replicated without you actually having to replicate it because it's digital. That is how digital works. All these things, the same basic stuff. It's your idea on tape or on a word processor or on video, but more or less ones or zeros. It's digital content and it gets distributed. So pick your poison, a podcast, a book, an audiobook, a webinar. Those things are not affected by coronavirus. We still got the internet. And as long as we've got this digital distribution, you can get your message out. You don't have to get in front of people live. You don't have to travel. Can't get an airplane. Doesn't matter. You don't have to leave your house. It is that easy. At least the distribution part. The marketing part, we're talking about that. That's what Red Podcast is. It is the marketing podcast for experts. I've talked about that in the past. I'm going to continue to talk about that in the future. For now, I just want you to think about this, getting your message out and doing it in a way that is not reliant on you leaving the house and getting in front of a live audience. Not to say that you're not going to do that or want to do that in the future, but remember, this stuff stacks on each other. That's part of it. You've got your digital content. You've got your replicated content. You've got your broadcast content. And you've got your live content. It all works together. Think about water. That's your content. You just put it in a different container. You got your jug of water. You got your cup of water. You got a big bottle. You got a little bottle. You've got a gallon jug. You've got a 300-gallon tank. That content can be delivered in any number of ways. So here's my big question to you. How can you change your delivery mechanism to fortify your expert business? If you are not able to get your message out right now from your house, stuck there in quarantine, how are you going to change it so you can get that message out? You don't have to change the whole business. Just going to stack it on top of what you were doing. And when that comes back, you got a bigger stack. And maybe you'll be like me, where you've got that residual money coming in. Not a lot, but it sure is nice to see. $80, $100, $200, who knows? Who knows? The biggest check that I ever got for residual income without me doing a thing, and this is for one single transaction because I've actually gotten bigger checks than this for distribution deals when they've got a catalog and they're doing multiple transactions at a time. But one single transaction that I've had, the biggest check, into the 5 figures. Not a high 5 figures, but 5 figures nonetheless. That's a nice check for not having to do anything, simply owning the content and more or less pressing record on it, making a copy, and letting somebody use it. It took me all of 30 minutes to get a referral to an attorney to do this deal. You do not have to change the whole business. Just change how you connect with people. If you need help, obviously, this is the kind of thing that I talk about here on Red Podcast. And to get it, bigpodcast.com/subscribe. There are a few podcasts listed there. You will know this one because it is red, R-E-D. Just like the name, it is the color red. You can subscribe via your iPhone, your Android device, or an old-fashioned RSS feed. However you want your podcast, you can get it with one click, bigpodcast.com/subscribe. And if you need more help, I got a few things that'll work with you. Reach out to me. Bigpodcast.com is my website. Shoot me an email. Let me know what you need help with. I can do it for you. I've been in this business for a long time. I talk about transitioning from the music industry. This is how I got here. We as an industry, the music industry, we are distributing content successfully. I had other industries come to me, book industry, film, television. How do we do that? Now that we got technology, faster speeds, bigger hard drives, hardware that lets us get this content out there if we want to, how do we do it? So that's how I branched out from music to film and TV to books and now podcasting. If you need help with any of those things, reach out to me, bigpodcast.com. Thank you for listening to Red Podcast, the marketing podcast for experts. And I will see you on the next episode. I've got the oldest active podcaster having a conversation with her. It's going to be a good one. I'll see you then.